Time to smash it up on a Miami Monday. I mean, really smash it on up. Smash things to the left, pop some kind of can to the right. What are we popping there, Ira?
It is. It's the morning ride from my friends up at Tavello up in Thomasville.
Oh, very nice.
Coffee blonde. It's delicious.
Coffee blonde. That's right. We need a little bit of coffee for the energy it takes to summon, to go through the laundry list of issues. You know, like if it was just one thing, Ira, maybe we could just focus on that one thing. But you've alluded to it before. I believe last week when we did the special video presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhees, he said, how long would the list be? Well, it would be from the ceiling to the floor, good sir. And so get that coffee and the coffee blonde going. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Smash, presented by State Farm agent Russ Voorhees. He's Ira Chaffel. My name is Tom Lang. We'll talk about Russ Voorhees and his greatness and his commitment and consistency, more consistent than a lot of organizations around here, in just a moment. Welcome to the show, though. Hit the thumbs up underneath the video for the therapy session we're about to have. At 1-6 on a Monday of Miami week, Ira, you know, this is usually a time where there's a ton of juice. And I even hear my own voice. Sometimes you don't know how it's going to sound until you get into the first couple of minutes of a show. And this sounds more like a post-game show after a blowout than it does a Monday smash gearing up for a rivalry tilt in Miami Gardens. Where is your head and heart at on a Monday night?
I don't know, man. I really don't know. Because on the one hand, yeah, I get where you're coming from. It's there's not much reason to be to look at this game and see much reason for hope. And you have a Florida State team that can't get out of the teens offensively, and you're playing the number 2 scoring offense in college football. You know, Miami averages over 50 points a game. And it's not like your defense is, one of the great 85 Bears or something where they're just going to shut down a high-powered offense. So Miami's going to get their points. And even if Miami's defense is not very good, it hasn't mattered who Florida State's offense has gone against. It has not put up points. So it's bleak, man. You know, I think just like Florida State fans were hammering the Clemson minus 14 or whatever it was, I think a lot of Noles fans are actually hammering the Miami minus 20 or 21 right now because just it's hard to have confidence in this team. I thought one thing that was kind of interesting, though, I did think Adam Fuller's confidence on Sunday was pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yes.
Was intriguing.
He feels like they're going to have a very good plan for this game.
He does. But he even heard himself saying it, and he was like, "I'm not predicting anything. I'm just saying I feel good about what we could do." So that's interesting. I will say the defense I think has played pretty well. If you look at big picture over the last month or so, for the most part, they've played better. Yeah, it's hard to imagine they're going to hold Miami less than 35. I mean, that would be probably 30 would be a great achievement. So how are you going to score more than 20 points? I just don't know what the path to victory is in this game. So I think that gets to your point, Tom. It's that when you try to map it out in your head, okay, how is this game going to happen? It's hard to find the path to victory.
Well, it's hard to see the game itself. Like typically on a Monday, I'm looking in my head at whatever venue it's going to be at down there or up here, and you can kind of see it. You know what time the game's going to kick. You know what the lighting situation is. Like you visualize how it's going to go down, and you play the simulations, and it's like one of the more fun things you can do in sports with any of your teams. If it's the Orioles or the Noles or whoever, you play the game out, and you're thinking back and forth. It's how we invest, but. I'm like Alex right now in the chat. Thanks for the comment, Alex. It's a race to the offseason. Let's face it. I'm thinking of, I brought it up today on the JCS, and Ira will get into something you and Jeff talked about here shortly. But, I looked at the clock on the computer, and it said, the date, Monday, October 21st. And I thought, in 2 months from now, on December 21st, signing day will have passed. The season will have been over. The window for the portal is open at that point. We're going to know a hell of a lot more about how Mike Norvell has decided that he's going to sink or swim, like how he's going to chart his course to sink or swim by this time 2 months from now. And like, I want to get there. Like I want to watch all the football in between, but I want to know the answers. Like it's just fascinating to me in the saddest of ways, Ira. Like what does he do next? And you guys discussed that today on the show, talking about perhaps bringing a counter voice, a counterculture voice into the coaching offices. And if you want to expound on that, I think the Smash audience would love to hear what you're talking about, what you're thinking about when it comes to maybe there's some yes men in Mike's office and he needs somebody to be a little bit stronger.
Well, I mean, I think if you look at who he's kind of surrounded himself with, I think it's a lot of people that have either worked for him or were kind of, I don't know, I'm not gonna say like grateful to be at Florida State, but this was a step up for them, or a safe landing spot. In the case of a Randy Shannon or someone like that. And so, I just don't know who in that staff, when you look at that staff, who's challenging Mike Norvell. Who's going to him and saying, "Coach, I don't think we're starting the right guy at quarterback," or I don't think I don't think we can block this play up, or I don't think that we're playing the right personnel in this package on defense, or whatever it was, or why haven't we tried this? I just don't know. Is that happening? It could be happening. We're not in those rooms, but to me, to get to a point where Florida State football is right now, you'd either have to have just so many things go wrong from so many different departments all at the same time, or I think it's more likely that you have Mike Norvell and maybe one person or two people, whoever's close to him, kind of making a lot of decisions and then basing everything else off of those decisions. Because again, I go back to, why is this offense so bad? They were wrong about the offensive line. And they were wrong about DJU. That was not a good fit for what they want to do, and the offensive line's not very good. And it's worse than not very good. The offensive line is not good; it's bad. And so those two things create a ripple effect for everything else, in my opinion. If you can't block and you don't have the right quarterback, I mean, there's not many things you can do. And I think that so my point is, I feel like maybe if you had some new voices in there, or different voices in there, or listening to more voices in there, maybe that would at least challenge you to not go down some of the roads they went down. Because I mean, I just think that there's too many reasons to not be confident in some of the decisions they made this offseason. And you just wonder, was anybody raising these issues before they got down the road?
Yeah, it's overly simplistic, but what's their record if they have a good offensive line this year? It's over 500. I would think. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Even with DJ, I think with DJ, you could have had an offense with DJ if you had a good offensive line, but you don't have a good offensive line. Now you have a quarterback, and then with DJ, if he got hurt, whatever it was, it limited his mobility. That obviously made things even worse. It's been a little bit of a perfect storm, but at the end of the day, the basis for which how this offense was constructed was around the idea that they were going to have a good offensive line, and it's been pretty much a disaster.
Yeah, and there was no insurance plan, but you can get insurance plan for yourself in many different ways with State Farm agent Russ Voorhis, who covers the entirety of the state of Florida, all of Georgia, all of Alabama, all of Nole Nation. You give him a call today at one of his two brick and mortar shops in Jacksonville Beach or Orange Park. We'll give the Orange Park number tonight, 904-276-9535, 904-276-9535. But for everybody out there, if you just want to go to the website, Russ Voorhis has a URL. It's after his own name, russvoorhis.com, spelled RUSSVORHIS.com, russvoorhis.com. Ira, again, if you've got questions, griefs, what is it with Festivus? The airing of the grievances, whatever you want to do, reaching out to Russ and his staff, tell them that Warchant sent you, but he'll have a conversation. If you get Russ on the phone, he'll talk to you about that offensive line a little bit and the things he doesn't like about it.
Yeah, I think we're at the point now where Russ is he's so angry. I'm not getting texts from him anymore on game day. For a while, the texts were getting hotter and hotter, and now it's like the line's gone dead. And I'm like, "Where's Russ? Where are you? Are you okay? I need to do a welfare check." But if like you said, the Jacksonville offices, he has offices in Jacksonville, the brick and mortar, you can go in there in person, but anywhere in the tri-state area, Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, he can service you as well. And, try to cheer him up. Russ needs some cheering up, I think, with this Florida State football team.
And we will get to that topic about maybe a certain player who can cheer us up or has the potential to cheer us up in just a second. But I need to tell everybody that in about 20 minutes time, Dominic Robinson, lead football analyst here at warchant.com, Warchant TV, will be by. So if you have questions for Dominic Robinson, maybe more about this breakdown of Brock Glenn. He brought up that when he was watching Brock's tape, if you watched last week's feature, it was excellent. He understands why DJ was in for as long as he was. Maybe he's got some thoughts already on Luke Kromenhoek, like things like that. If you've got questions for Dominic Robinson, file those away. But Ira, your thoughts on Luke Kromenhoek, who got into the game on Friday night It all fell apart for Brock Glenn. I'll own it. I was a guy who said, let him have his moment. And then 3 turnovers on 3 consecutive plays. You've got no choice but to put somebody else in there or go wildcat or something. You've got to calm him down. Luke comes in. What do you think of what you saw from him on Friday and subsequently in the practices that you've seen, including today's practice?
Can I address something in the chat real quick first?
Oh, no. Who said something that you don't like?
No. So, and Jeremy's a friend of the show. We love Jeremy. I'm not ripping him, but he's like, why won't anyone at Warchant just flat out say it that Mike Norvell is a broken shell of himself, and it doesn't matter who he brings in. Why won't you guys say it? And then somebody responded that we don't want to lose access. I want to touch on this because this comes up a lot in threads on our message boards and on posts on social media where people say, why don't you guys ask tougher questions? Why don't you guys say this? Why don't you say that? Because you don't want to lose access. Listen, man, read our columns. Read what Corey writes. Read what I've written. Watch what Jeff and Tom say. Watch what Aslan and Corey say. If we were worried about access, there's a lot of things we wouldn't say or write. We're not worried about access. Mike Norvell is not going to kick us out of practice because we were critical. Now, if we break some of the rules they have, like divulging injury information, which can help the opponent, and I don't think our subscribers want that anyway. They don't want us helping Miami by saying, hey, so-and-so doesn't look healthy right now. So there are some things that would get us kicked out of practice, but being critical of a 1-6 football team is not one of them. I spent my 3-2-1 column that ran yesterday. The first half of it was criticizing Mike Norvell and saying he took the complete wrong approach in that game by trying to have Brock Glenn throwing the football. Both of those interceptions I thought were crazy for Norvell. He believes so much in Brock Glenn that he's got him throwing an out from the far hash on 3rd and 9 that gets picked off and run back for a touchdown. He believes so much in Brock Glenn that after he's turned it over on 2 consecutive plays, he has him drop back and throw again and has another interception that basically ends the game. I mean, that whole column is criticizing Mike Norvell. Now, I may be saying it in a nicer, more diplomatic way than people want us to, but we're not worried about access. Mike Norvell, it would become a story. It would become a huge story if Mike Norvell has had open practices his whole career, goes 1-6. The media is critical, not unfairly, just critical about some of the things that are happening, and we get kicked out of practice. Now that's a completely different story that I don't think Florida State wants. So that's not why we don't do it, but we do have some semblance of decorum. And I can't write or say that Mike Norvell right now is a broken coach who can't be resurrect this program. When you were 19-0, you won 19 straight games. You went 13-0 a year ago. They are bad right now. They have a bad offensive line. They don't have good quarterback play. The receivers can't catch anything. It's a bad team with a terrible offense. But that doesn't mean he can't fix it. And he doesn't deserve a chance to fix it. And he doesn't have a $65 million buyout. So just want to clear the air on that.
Well, and Harry is behind you, and he's put his money where his heart is, Ira. He's behind you. Thank you very much, Harry. We appreciate the contribution to the program. I agree. I mean, like this, but this is where I can be the fan and the media guy. We're all angry. We don't know where to put it. So like, for example, Ira, there are certain people that like I love that are in the chat community that say we're shoveling garbage down your throat because we're telling you Mike's a good coach. But then in the same chat, in the same episode of the same show, I had a guy today say that I'm trying to make my career by calling for Mike Norvell's head. Like, what am I saying? Both things at the same time? I mean, and Jeremy, exactly. Like there's all love here. It's just 1-6 and you lost to Duke for the first time in program history. I get it. I get where the pain comes from, but the idea that I want to give Mike Norvell a piece of my mind, why don't you say to Mike exactly what I would say to him if I could get him cornered in Publix, which you wouldn't even do if you saw him in Publix anyway.
Most people. Hopefully you wouldn't.
Right. Well, yeah, maybe some would, but like that's what 1-6 does to you. We're a broken bunch right now because we're pissed the hell off.
No, 100%. It taints everything. I mean, like, one of the things during the game on Saturday that a lot of fans got mad about was one of the strength coaches, Lanier Coleman, when the Duke player, I don't know what the Duke player was doing. The Duke player purposely jumped and hit people on Florida State sideline. The play was over. The ball had sailed out of bounds. The Duke player jumped after it had already sailed by and like ran into a couple of the strength coaches. Lanier Coleman, and I can say this because I've known him and interacted with him. And if you watch it closely, he's laughing as he's flexing at the Duke player. He's not flexing at him like he has to act like he's tough. Lanier Coleman could have break that kid into 4 pieces in like 2 seconds. I mean, Lanier Coleman's a monster of a human being. He was flexing at him, kind of joking with the guy that, oh, you think you're going to knock me over? And the kid, I think, is even laughing. And the other strength coach next to him is laughing. But people went nuts ripping this guy because they're mad about this football team. If you're 1-6, you hate everything. People want to go after. I heard you and Jeff talking about today. They want to go after the administration. They want to go after everybody because everybody's so mad. And I get it, but I can't go along for the ride and everything people want to complain about.
Well, yeah, it's you lose a game, it's the players. You lose a couple, it's a coach, like a coordinator or a position coach. You lose a handful, it's the head coach. You lose more than that, now you're talking about the athletic director. Like that's it's just the more you lose, the more it goes uphill in a sense.
But nothing anybody has seen during the season was known before the season. So what are you going to do now? You're on this ride. Like we all bought the ticket, we got on the ride. Yeah. Now we have to wait for the ride to stop, which is the end of this season. Then we can see what people are going to do. I don't get and it gets back to your point before, and then we'll get to Luke, but your point before about changes that need to be made.
Yeah.
The question is it just performative? Are you firing coaches during the season just because you want to let the fan base know, good, we fired some guys? Are you happy? Like, is that going to make anybody happy? Or is it because you think this person can't do this job that you probably just gave an extension for 8 months ago, and now you don't think they can do the job anymore, and so you want to put somebody else in that role? Well, if that's it, okay, but you have to have somebody to go into that role and have it be a positive thing for your team, or you're just going to make your team worse. If it's just performative, then okay, I guess that's what schools do. But to me, I don't know that makes your team any better. So I don't know. I mean, I think that's the challenge with it. The Florida State situation is a little unique because Mike Norvell is the offensive coordinator. You're seeing a lot of coordinators get fired, but Mike Norvell can't fire himself as offensive coordinator. So in the way the defense has played the last month, it would be crazy to me to go fire somebody on the defensive staff when they're playing much better than the offensive staff.
Well, so yeah, especially before that side before the season's out. Like Eric, I see him and Tom. Someone asked Mike if he's ever given play calling up in his career. Yeah, Kenny called plays for a while.
Yeah,
here at Florida State. Tom, it's ask him if he's contemplating handing over play calling duties. I mean, like, look, I think at this point, that is something that the next move at offensive coordinator is going to tell you. I would expect a new offensive. This is me personally. This is not anything inside knowledge. I think there's going to be a new OC next year. Now, at that point, Mike's going to have to answer that question, but I don't know it's with this personnel and this staff, Ira, that he's going to hand over play calling duties. I think the way that they assembled the staff this year, he's the one that's going to be in charge of calling the plays, and especially with young quarterbacks, especially with Brock and Luke.
Well, and then the next question is, again, if you can't block and if you have young quarterbacks and you don't have receivers who are dependable, I don't know if it matters who's calling the plays. Again, if it's just like, the fans want a DJ gone. They want a DJ gone week 1, I guess, officially, the game 2. 3 series into that game, the fans were chanting, we want Brock. You got Brock. Congratulations. Now they want Mike to give up play calling. If that happens, is it going to make anything better? I don't think so. With the materials you have on this team this season. Now, I would say this. Going forward, though, going into next year, man, this roster needs a whole lot of help. Certainly on the offensive line. It's number 1 priority. But also, and that's only if you figured out the quarterback. If one of those guys is the guy, we'll talk about that in a second. But offensive line is a huge need. And then if you want to, if Norvell is going to be either forced or decides to turn over the offense, well, is that just hiring a new play caller? Like when you said Kenny called the plays, Kenny did call the plays, but it was Mike Norvell's offense.
Sure.
Is Mike Norvell going to not just give over play calling, but let somebody bring in their own offense and their own offensive line coach? And if they do that, I mean, if he's willing to do that, I think that's great. But again, you got to have better players to work with, or it doesn't really matter to me.
Right, and that's where I don't know if you said this when we were talking before the air or not, but Mike, the general manager, Mike, the roster builder, right? Like this is.
I think that was before we got on air. Yeah, I was. Yeah. I just said I think I'm more mad at Mike Norvell, the general manager, is the architect of this team and the personnel, than I am Mike Norvell, the play caller. I just think
Right.
that's like, the garnet, that's the side dishes. I mean, the main course is the personnel. That's, man, at the end of the day, the teams that are good have better players. Now, you can put them in better positions, and I will not argue to anybody that Mike Norvell and his staff have put these players on offense in the best positions they can be put in. But I do think there's a ceiling to what it could be with this personnel, and it's not very high.
Yeah. How many times has something been schemed wide open beyond like a coach's dream on film? Like, well, if this block happens and that block happens, then we have a touchdown. Like, talking about
Wide
a
open.
dude is literally wide open and the play isn't made. I mean, at that point, it's out of the schemer's hand. But it's going to be on Mike this offseason, Ira. And this is something that, we have a video on the channel from the post-game show where we had caller reaction and the comments. People are calling. They're at 1-6. Duke sent a lot of people over the edge, Ira, where they're saying, I don't care about $65 million buyouts. If you've got money to leave the ACC, then you've got money to get rid of this guy. I still believe he earned the right for one more year beyond this one. This is my opinion. It sounds like you agree with that, but when you take what cancerous, toxic place Florida State was, and you face it even with your own program in year 2 after the COVID year at 0-4, and you find a way to flip that sucker to 19 in a row and 23 out of 26 in an ACC championship, this is an unprecedented failure this year. It's awful. I hear you. I do think you get one more year. So,
I don't think there's any question about it. To me, there's no question about it. You just gave a guy an 8-year, $65 million or $80 million contract, 8-year, $80 million contract 8 months ago, and then you're going to turn around and try to fire him. I mean, unless he did something egregious, that then you're firing with cause. But just for the play on the field, I don't think it. And again, there have been coaches that have had terrible downturns. Like Brian Kelly went 4-8 one year at Notre Dame, made a ton of changes, reinvented himself, reinvented that staff. They turned it around. So it can happen. It's not like there's no chance of it. And in this day and age of college football, where teams' rosters change so quickly, I don't think there's any reason to believe they couldn't turn it around pretty quickly. And I do think Mike Norvell can run a program. I think there's a lot of things he's got to re-examine. I think he's got to examine whether or not he needs to be the person that makes all these decisions, whether he's got to be the person that oversees all the personnel, whether he's got to be the guy that is the point person on most of this recruiting. I mean, I think he's taken on. I think he's stretched too thin, and I think when you start having problems, then everything's magnified because you're the guy that has kind of tasked himself with fixing all these things. We need to talk about Luke though before you check out of here, Tom. So
we do. And Luke look, man. I think Luke is going to help define the what comes next for Mike. I mean, it feels to me like while Brock has some game to him and some moxie, and certainly he needed to go back in, I think, last Friday night. That was the right move to get Luke exposure and then get him off the field because things were starting to move a little fast. And the O-line was a turnstile, and he didn't want to bail outside of the pocket. Brock at least had shown the clock to get out of there, and Luke was going to get hurt if he was back there too much longer, which is ridiculous, Ira. I mean, my God, like you got to fear playing a stud young quarterback because you might get him hurt because the O-line's so bad. I mean, goodness gracious. His ability, though, and Mike Norvell's talking points, the way he answered a question on Sunday in his press conference about Luke and Luke's progress, there's a different light in his eye when he speaks on Luke Kromenhoek. Not my opinion. Just watch Mike answer questions about Luke and then watch him answer questions about Brock, and you tell me which one he believes has a higher ceiling. What have you seen from Luke to give you the impression that maybe Mike is right and this is a guy that can help take him out of the abyss that we're in right now?
Yeah, and Corey and I disagree a little bit on the game Friday night. Corey felt like it was clear that Brock was more effective with the offense because they did produce more offense when he was in there, and Luke did seem to be slower to process, slower to get the ball out of his hands. I agree with all that. I just think from an upside in terms of throwing the football, in terms of arm talent, hand talent, whatever you want to call it, I think Luke is at a different level. And at practice today, I thought, and I did my observations on the tribal council, I thought Luke was very, very good today. And there was a stretch in 7-on-7 where he made nice throw after nice throw after nice throw. And I wonder we'll see. We'll go out there on Wednesday. Tomorrow's practice is closed. We'll see what it looks like on Wednesday. But I wonder if now that he's been out there and survived it, if that kind of relaxed him a little bit in the sense of, oh man, I can do this. Like I can play at this level. I can make those throws, because until that point, he had never got on the field in a game. So we'll see what it looks like. But I'm actually much more intrigued by Luke in the long term. I think he's got way more upside, and I think it may be closer than we think. Now the key is, as you said, you don't want him to get hurt, but you also don't want him to start seeing ghosts. I always go back to Drew Weatherford. I always feel like that Drew Weatherford had such a bad offensive line that he started looking for the pass rush, and I felt like he could never kind of get out of that. And that's the challenge. You can ruin a young quarterback. But I just think, man, if you can work, I would play both of them over these next 5 games. But I'm pretty excited by Luke, because some of the throws he's making in practice, and again, it's got to be in the game, but they don't look like anybody else has looked in practice since Jordan left. Like DJ never looked like on some of these throws like Luke is looking right now. Brock isn't either. I'm not a quarterback coach. I'm not a quarterback guru. I'm just a guy who can watch where the football lands and where the target is. And I think Luke has got a ton of upside. So that it encourages me to the point where I'm like, okay, we've been talking about all year. I love the young skill on this offense. Lewayne McCoy, Elijah Moore, the tight ends, Amari Williams and Landon Thomas, Mekhi Danzy, there's Cam Davis. There's a bunch of young talent on this offense. If Luke is the guy, and he really could be that guy, now, man, just fix the offensive line. And I think the offense could be really good next year, because the receivers, the one thing I would say about this is the young receivers don't know where they're supposed to be all the time. They don't run the right routes all the time. That's why they have been reluctant to play them. But they're all natural catchers of the football. And some of these older guys are not. And so you need to get to where they get those guys on the field with a better quarterback. And if you fix the offensive line play, I think there's no reason this offense couldn't be a lot better next year.
Yeah, it feels like, especially, yes, if those young receivers, and it's going to be a big, 5 games for those young receivers, just to see that, first of all, when they're open, they catch the ball. Can they separate? These things that you're not seeing consistently from Florida State's veteran targets. Like if they go ahead.
There was a play today, just to illustrate it. There's a play today. Luke, again, it's 7-on-7, so it wasn't a pass rush, but Luke throws a deep ball to Lewayne McCoy in the end zone. There's a couple of DBs in the area. It's a 45-yard pass. It's probably over 50 yards in the air, kind of like the one he threw to Kentron in the game. Lewayne McCoy went up and high pointed the ball and snatched it out of the air for the touchdown. Since Keon left,
right,
has any Florida State receiver done that? These receivers have been waiting for the ball to come down, which is how passes get broken up. Lewayne McCoy is going up to get the ball. Elijah Moore had a couple patches. These are guys, Amari Williams, the catch he had against Clemson, these are guys that will go up and get the ball. Man, as soon as they can get on the field, man, I really think get on the field consistently and not bust assignments. I love the young skill. Now, the key is to not let them all transfer.
Right.
They got to keep them.
Which is ridiculous, because it's every year. It's every year that happens. And when you are 1-6, it's not about, just high school recruiting. It's about current roster talent. How much have they already put on film in their careers, or are they still so close to the high school player they were, meaning they're a red or true freshman? Is the school that finished in second for their services perhaps interested in poaching them from your roster? If you can retain those players, which is going to be a tough thing for Mike to do, playing them would help to retain them. Then at that point, I'm with you. The on-field thing is dump a ton of money on an offensive line. And then if you need to get a skill position player or two, go for it and do that, and then build your offense that way. And then on the other side, in the coaching offices, you've got a lot of work to do there as well.
Yeah, for sure, without question. It's going to take an investment, man. And look, Florida State over the last couple of years invested a ton of money into football. Once Mike Norvell got over the hump, and it looked like, okay, he's gonna make it. Jordan Travis is the real deal. All these players are coming back. Going into 2023. Football, man, the football administration, the FSU administration put a ton of money into football. planes for recruiting and helicopters and extra staff, and they did all these things to improve the football program, giving every resource they needed. So you don't want to then turn around and fire people and then just burn money and then have to go hire new people. But you are where you're at. I mean, like, they have to figure out how to fix this because there's too much on the line in terms of filling up that stadium in the future, paying off this debt on the football facility and the stadium. They have to get good in football quickly. That's as mad as everybody is that's watching this, or as an FSU fan, as mad as you are, that's how concerned the administration is, because there's so much money riding on this that they have to get it right.
Jamel King, going to listen to this at work tomorrow. Just came in a live chat to say, go Noles forever. We need to hit that portal hard. Also, for wide receivers, more Dylan Gibbons. Also, Tom, go Bucks. Thank you, Jamel. Hope you're listening on a Tuesday after a Buccaneers win over the Ravens on a Monday night. Thank you for watching the show. Coming up in just a moment will be Dominic Robinson. We see him in the green room. And Dominic, he said, I see a backup in Brock Glenn. I don't know that he saw 3 consecutive turnovers, 3 plays of consecutive turnovers. Maybe that's one thing he'll talk about when he joins the show in just a moment. But we have reached at that breaking point. We're going to get a 15-second message from Russ Forhis. Ira's going to take to the floor and guide the discussion with Dominic. Thank you, everybody, for your contributions tonight in the chat. Remember, tomorrow, 1 o'clock, Seminole Headlines, live right here on this channel, in addition to the excellent analysis you're about to get from Ira and Dominic. Good night, everybody, and wait 15 seconds to get Ira and D-Rob and get your questions ready for them. Thanks.
Contact Russ Forhis for an auto quote today.
D-Rob in the house.
What's up, everybody?
How's it going, man? I'm sure we're going to have a bunch of questions for you here in a minute, man. I wanted to bring up the video you did last week, though, on Brock Glenn. And, the comment you made, Tom just mentioned it, that, some of the throws that Brock missed early in that game made you feel like, okay, now you understand why maybe Brock wasn't, they weren't racing to put Brock in over DJ Uyunglele. I thought, man, and I don't know what you thought of the limited action Luke got in that game Saturday, but watching him in practice today, man, I think Luke's got a lot more upside. But I don't know if he's as ready as Brock is. Brock's been here for a year longer than Luke. And so I think that's going to be kind of the challenge going forward these next 5 weeks. It feels to me like Luke could be the long-term answer, but he's probably not the answer right now. So I think balancing that could be a kind of a challenge. What are your thoughts as you watch that game from the other night?
So I think the first thing, I want to make sure I call out is the point that I was trying to make about Brock being the backup and why he's the backup and why they hadn't gone away from him was more talking about kind of where DJ is and where he fit in terms of, I guess, assigning the blame. And I was hoping that after we got a full look at Brock, I was just hoping as fans that we could at least take a step back and go, okay, we have assigned some of this blame to DJ that's not on DJ. The team as a whole is just not a very talented team. Right. And of course that always is going to fall on the quarterback. There's never a time where it hasn't, but yeah, Brock is clearly a backup. I think he's a very solid backup, on an ACC team. And what I saw from Luke was a third string quarterback. His eyes are coming down. The rush is clearly bothering him. Even at times where I thought, I just finished watching the film about 3 hours ago, and there were 1 or 2 times where I thought the answer was there. It was right in front of him. He just had to deliver the ball, and he's almost looking right at it. And he doesn't deliver it. He just, he kind of just scrambles. Right. You can tell his brain scrambles. So the thought there, if you're in the coaching room, is that on us in terms of the reps that we're giving him during the week? Do we need to put more people in his face and at his feet? Or does he need to get more game time reps so that he's comfortable and he can deliver the ball the way that we see it in 7-on-7? And so, those are the things that make it really tough to be a fan, because we want to be emotional. We want to assign some blame, but we're not realizing that Monday through Friday, these guys are going through hundreds of reps of information that's being given to the coaches. And that's why you don't see a Brock Glenn as soon as you do. And that's why it's taken this long to get Luke in. And that's why once Luke got in, he came right back out, because the things that they're seeing, on a Saturday, or in this case on a Friday, they'd seen it throughout the course of practice.
Right.
The things that are whatever your warts are, and the things that you do well, they've seen both sides, and they're balancing sort of the risk reward of giving a guy a shot. And so I didn't see enough from Luke, unless, again, this goes back to what I don't get to see on Monday to Friday. I didn't see enough just on game day that says, hey,
sure,
this guy needs more reps. But again,
right.
I have to qualify that by saying this guy might be more talented than Brock. He might be. I don't know. Right now, I don't trust that staff and their talent evaluation, as far as me to this camera right in front of me, because they clearly evaluated a lot of talent, they've had a lot of misses in terms of talent evaluation. This is supposed to be the best O-line we've ever seen. It might be the worst we've ever seen. DJ was supposed to be a great fit. He's obviously not a fit. No. There's a lot of things that just aren't fitting. And so, I think the question needs to come back to our talent evaluation, right, and our talent acquisition. Are we getting the guys that we're supposed to be getting? Are we going after the guys that we're supposed to be going after in the first place? Do we not know how these guys fit? It seems like it's so crazy. Just a year ago, they hit on 100%. The Jaheim Bells and the Keon Colemans and the Johnny Wilsons, who you guys knew I was a big fan of, and all these guys, they hit on every single one, including Jordan Travis.
Yeah.
Now, who else wanted Jordan Travis when we took Jordan Travis?
And that was Jordan actually transferred in when Willie was still here. But he was sitting on the bench. Like, Willie never played him.
Correct.
And then, the staff with Kenny Dillingham, they did use him. But let me ask you this, though. So given the situation they're in right now, mm-hmm, what do you do? So like Brock, he got thrown in that game, those games last year, which was unfair, but it definitely helped him. You saw from the Louisville game, the ACC championship game, to the Georgia game, even though it was a terrible situation, you saw him get better. And then the Clemson game, I thought he looked better than he did last season. Luke hasn't had those opportunities. So how do you get him that opportunities, those experiences, when it's kind of a cluster across the board on this offense? Mm-hmm. Like, and without ruining him is, I guess that's the kind of the conundrum. How would you handle this situation to get those guys? Brock's more equipped to handle this situation they have now. I think Luke looked great in practice today, but that's completely different, as you said, than in a game with guys that are trying to hurt him. And so, I don't know, but how does he get that experience if you don't play him?
Yeah.
But it's a mess.
Yeah, I think I'm on record of saying, one, I'm an outside the box thinker. I don't think like most coaches that coach football. And I'm, again, being outside the box, I would have a plan. I would have had a plan for Brock before we had to go to Brock. Right. And that plan would have looked different than the plan for DJ. Right. If you guys haven't checked out the all 22 evaluation or assessment that Tom and I did last week, you should definitely go check that out right now. But one of the things that I said was he didn't run the ball, and it wasn't even a designed run until I believe it was like play 54.
Right.
And they played like 60 something snaps last week. Well, clearly they saw something, because this week it was like play 6 or 7. And it wasn't just them seeing something, because it wasn't just design runs, but it was a scramble. The first run that he had last week was actually a scramble. And so, again, to me, I think there should have been a plan for Brock and quarterback run game prior to ever going to Brock. While as soon as DJ starts struggling, and maybe even before that, you probably should have had a plan. And I think right now, especially if things are the way that you're saying in terms of at practice and, the kid Luke having more talent and this other kid apparently having a tremendous talent and being able to run the ball, to me, you got to have a plan. And this was the other thing I was a little frustrated with. I thought they put Luke in a really, really bad spot. I don't think that's the time when you go to the guy. I don't think you wait for the struggle. I think you tell the guy, hey, series 3 is yours. Series 4 is yours. And maybe it is after an interception or a fumble or something. But to me, it's predetermined that, hey, if we're within a score, you're going in. And if we're down 2 scores, you're going in. There's no matter what, you're going in at this time. And these are the plays you're going to run. We're going to set you up for success. And I just thought they really, really, that they really, I didn't like the way they used the plan. Like, if you know you're going to Luke, I'm not going to Luke to try to save us when we're down 2 scores because we just turned the ball over. Like, there's a reason. Again, he's the 3rd string guy. Like, he's not better than the guy you have out there.
Well, yeah,
so,
yeah.
You don't go to him to try to salvage something that the guy that's technically better than him, you don't go. To me, it's like you have a plan in advance. You go to him and you put him in an unstressful position. Maybe after the defense makes a turnover, or maybe after they get a 3 and out. Now you go to the guy with his predetermined plan and you see if you got something. And if you got something, then you stick to it. So going back to answer your question, that's where
you'd have
to me,
packages.
I would have a plan. I would have a plan for Luke right now.
Right.
If that's the guy, if he's more talented than Brock, but Brock gives us a better chance to win right now today, I don't sit Brock, but I tell Brock, hey, you're going to series 3, 6, 9, you're going to be standing over here. I think it's something that Sark kind of tried to do this week with Sark or with Arch and Quinn. But I didn't get to watch the game, so I don't know when he made the change, and I don't know when he made the change back. But I think he may have fumbled it too, because again, to me, you don't do it based on result. You don't do it based on the scoreboard. You do it because right now, this play gives us the best chance to get a first down. And then and this guy playing quarterback, this is what he does well. So now this is when we put him in and we let him run those plays. And if we get those first downs, we keep you in. We let you keep rolling. And if we don't get those first downs, we go back to the other guy. Now I didn't destroy 2 guys because the other guy's going, hey, we were going to get those first downs because those were the best plays to run. It's the same thing you do at corner or at any other position. When it's 3rd and 12, I don't have my 3rd linebacker out there on the field. I put in the best guy that's going to help me win on this play.
Right.
So those are the tools. To me, those are the tools that you use, is like, okay, I'm going to put these guys in successful positions. My best cover guys are going to be on the field when it's time to cover. My guy that's the best quarterback run game guy, he's going to be on the field when it's the best time to run the ball with the quarterback.
Yeah.
I like that. That to me, that's my opinion.
No, that makes sense. I get it. I think I didn't have a problem when he pulled Brock when he did, because it felt like, man, this kid is actively losing you this football game. Mm-hmm. And so if you put somebody else in and just hand the ball off, maybe that gives Brock a few minutes to just kind of decompress and kind of, just kind of calm down. But I also thought they put him in bad positions. I didn't like the coming. He's already turned it over on 2 consecutive plays, and then dropping him back on first down. I didn't love that either. But I see the point you're making. The plane's crashing into the mountain, and the pilot's like, here, or somebody's like, hey, you take it. You take the joystick or whatever. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. it's a lot on Luke for sure. And so,
yeah.
but also that's why,
And I do want to go back and say I do agree that Brock needed to get pulled. I just think or I shouldn't even say pulled. I think they should have made a change sooner than they did. I thought it was too late, and I do think once you get to that point, you definitely have to do it. You know, after that second turnover, you definitely have to do it. And I just think in order to, when you're gonna do that after a second turnover, in order to have really like smooth that situation or that transition over, it would have helped if Luke will have played a snap before that.
And if you, like you said, if you had a package for him. Yeah.
Correct. And and if he knew, hey, I'm going in, he goes in, even if it is, he just hands it off 2 or 3 times, you're probably going to get a better version of Brock of Luke when the plane is crashing, because he will have at least taken the reins at some point prior to the plane crashing, so that's the thing, that, it sort of frustrated me. I didn't like the situation. It put everybody in a bad spot. It left Luke in a bad spot. There was nothing that he could really do, or at least there was something he could have done, but it would have been a Herculean effort for him to make plays in those situations. And, and then now you got Brock going, man, I'm already on a bad team. I'm not getting protected for at all. I've turned it over twice, and now I got to watch the other guy play.
Right.
So
let me ask you this, man, because you're the only person watching this or in this conversation, probably the only one watching this that played Division I wide receiver. One of the questions that it came up earlier in the chat, because I've talked a lot about the young talent on this roster. It's the skill positions. They've got, we saw the young tight ends against Clemson. They've each had touchdowns already in the limited action. They've had Landon Thomas and Amari Williams. There's a bunch of young talent at wide receiver and running back. You're seeing some of the running back, a little bit of the wide receivers, but not all of them. Now, I would tell you this, and you're not a practice, but I am. I can tell you this. There's plenty of times in practice where they are getting yelled at after routes. Like, I don't know what they're supposed to be doing, but they're either not lining up exactly right. They're not running the right depth on the route. They're not reading the defensive back right. So those guys haven't gotten on the field yet. But I understand the frustration for fans, because you watch around the country and there's plenty of freshman wide receivers that find their way on the football field. So, like, what are some of the and you coach football and you played it at a high level. What are some of the factors that that go into that? Without, obviously, I apologize, you're not at practice, but just
big I would say usually just with the young guys, they just can't get lined up. And, typically we play at a really fast pace. Coach Norvell likes to play at a really fast pace, and they've had to slow that down, obviously. But that's usually the thing that keeps young guys. It's not usually talent, especially when you're at a Florida State. Usually guys are, physical or fast, or they have some sort of plus tool. That's how they got there. That could play in, any Division I offense. The problem usually is getting lined up, because if you don't start in the right spot, it's hard to end in the right spot, type of thing.
Right.
And so that ends up being a big problem. Usually it's just guys getting lined up, whether that's changing your splits, whether you have to condense your split to get closer to the ball, widen your split to create room for another route, things like that tend to keep the young guys from playing early. And it's very frustrating, I'll tell you, with this group. Like I said, I just watched the film probably 3 hours ago, and I can't tell you how many times, like, just my stomach dropped with the thought of how far we've fallen from a talent standpoint from one year to the next. I mean, I used to stand up in my chair watching some of the things that Keon and Johnny and Jaheim Bell were doing. I mean, they were just abusing guys out wide and not always getting the ball. These aren't always on catches. These aren't always on touchdowns, or sometimes it was blocking. I mean, even going back to like the Pittman days when Micah Pittman was playing wide out, there was a lot of really good wide out play happening. And I'm not just talking about running a route, catching a pass, the things that we see are the highlights. I'm not talking about Twitter highlights or Instagram highlights. I'm just talking about good wideout play. It was consistent in that room, last year. And the way that it's fallen off from last year to this year, I mean, obviously the drops are, your job, your name, the title in your name is receiver. So that's a problem. That's a big problem. But there's so many other things that are just so poor right now, from the route running to the understanding of the assignments, to the depth on the routes. I mean, it's really, really poor. And that's a frustrating thing, because we really, as a former Florida State wideout, and a guy who was a fan way before I was a player, there was nothing better than watching a Seminole wideout play. Going back to the Kez McCorveys and those guys, like, there was just nothing better. Like, those guys, I idolize E.G. Green, man. I idolize those guys. I mean, they just played a style that made me a fan. And so when I turn on and I see garnet and gold, that's what I expect to see. And it's just really unfortunate. There's not a lot there right now. And again, my hope is that it's getting better. And like you said, those young guys, hopefully they're learning and they can figure out how to get lined up so we can get them in there.
Hopefully, Ben will log up or bring up a couple questions for you here in a second. I want to ask one last thing, though, on the, from a big picture standpoint, because some of the people on our staff, Corey, who and some of the people on our staff are really harping on the play calling / offense that they're running. My point is, if the receivers are what we've seen, not Florida State caliber, the ones that are playing mostly, and the offensive line is this offensive line, and you've got young quarterbacks. What scheme are you? I mean, like, what would D-Rob be doing? D-Rob, you got hired as the OC tomorrow with those ingredients. What are we doing?
Well, what's interesting? I actually think he has the answer, or at least some part of the answer, and is trying to do it. And I again, if you can go back to, you guys go back and watch last week's show, I talked about the stick concept that they're running, and they had success with it again on Saturday or Friday. Sorry, but it was just not enough. And I don't know if it's overthinking and not wanting to become predictable. But I honestly believe that when we line up in some sort of empty set with a motion or a shift, and run stick, which is a very simple, I mean, it's really like middle school concept. I think you just live and die on those things. And the thing that's amazing about Coach Norvell, I'll have to admit, this week he ran a version of stick that I had never seen that was phenomenal, where they're also running a swing screen to the stick. So you have your inside receiver that's running a stick route, your flat route that expands the underneath zone. Instead of having that guy just run a flat, he was actually going to block for the running back who was also swinging to that stick side. They ended up throwing the stick, and I think this was on a third down, and they completed the pass. It was great. But that's where I keep, kind of harping that Coach Norvell is really working his tail off to scheme up these things. And the execution of it, because they tried to run it later, and for some reason the quarterback went to the outside receiver who was running a curl route, and we're not good enough to get separation, and it's our best receiver, and he's running a curl, and the cornerback is sitting on the curl, and he breaks it up. And actually, it was crazy because I was sitting with Deuce, my son, when it happened, and he had just asked me about Hakeem Williams. And I said, it's been a struggle. And literally, as it happened, that play happened. And I said, that was it. They're not winning one-on-ones.
Right.
They're just not winning one-on-ones. And so, again, Coach Norvell called it. He got a first down on it. He tried to come back to it later to the other side. and for some reason the ball went somewhere else. The quarterback decided to go somewhere else, which was not a bad decision, but it wasn't good enough because the guy that was in the one-on-one didn't win the one-on-one. So it's almost like it's this this cycle of when he does make proper play calls, there's no call that can make the play for the player. The player has to make the play. So if it was me, I would stick to getting the ball out in crazy quick. I would run, and he's trying to run screens into the boundary.
Mhm.
And then they try to go, and this was another thing I called out that I thought they would do this week, and they did it. They tried to go screen and go, and Brock threw the ball to the overhang linebacker who was playing into the boundary, because we've now run screen into the boundary, probably 10 times in the last 2 weeks. And so they knew screen and go was coming. They don't go play the screen. And so, yeah, it's right now it's all bad. It's one of those things where there's no decision. There's no sort of decisions you can make.
Real quick, for people that haven't watched that video yet, scroll back to late last week. D-Rob's all 22 video with Tom, and he explains what the stick route is and that concept and how the different ways Mike Norvell's run it and why. So if you don't know what he's talking about, because I wouldn't have, go watch that video. Joseph asked in the chat, D-Rob, what's the biggest issue you think with this team right now?
I said it earlier. To me, it's the talent acquisition and then the development of the talent. And I said it a couple weeks ago when I was on the Smash, or maybe a month ago when I was on the Smash, that somewhere we went wrong. We don't have – it's the drop-off of talent from last year to this year is just – it's astronomical. And it's not all just the portal. That's where I say it's not just the talent, acquisition, which has to be good. You got to go in the portal and get guys, but you got to also develop the guys that you already have there. And because those guys are going to get hurt, they're going to get dinged. They're going to get ankles on a play. Johnny would miss games from time to time, and nobody's looking back and going, hey man, during that 13-0 season, we would have been so much better if Johnny didn't get hurt. Like, we had other guys. There were other guys that stepped up in moments. And to me, that's where the development of your high school guys, comes into play. And we either have misevaluated who we're bringing in, because I think the high school rankings have been pretty good, or at least decent.
I can kind of real quick, just kind of like a Cliff Notes version. So they did sign some pretty high profile receivers last year. Hakeem Williams was one of them. They also brought in Vandrevius Jacobs, Goldie Lawrence. They brought in a few 4-star guys. Vandrevius transferred out. Goldie Lawrence transferred out. Hakeem hasn't really developed quite to the level I think people are expecting. And you had those transfer guys that I think made it hard to bring in maybe some other guys. And then going into the spring, I think they recognized the problem, and I think they thought, I don't know if you, I'm sure you remember because your son plays college football at a high level, but there was all that talk that after the spring, the portal was going to go crazy. Like everybody is going in the portal after the spring. And I think they thought that was going to happen, and they thought they'd be able to go out and get some big time receivers, but then that really didn't happen. And, I think the guys they did want, they didn't really get. So I don't think this was totally I don't think Mike Norvell thought, yes, I want to be rolling out this receiving core. I think so it was a confluence of events and some bad decisions. So I'm not absolving them, but I don't think this was all evaluation. I think they kind of misplayed some things along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, just to explain.
But yeah, that's where I would go, is, to me, like, to answer the question. I just think the players that we acquired are not playing to what we expected them to be. Or, we got a damaged player that we didn't evaluate properly. We thought was going to be better than he was. So it's one thing or the other. Either we didn't develop them, because I'm not just talking about this current signing class. I'm talking about the class prior to this one.
Right.
To me, that's, I feel like that's where the issue is like, when I watched the team it's not a scheme thing. We're not being outcoached. Do the coaches make mistakes? Absolutely. Do the coaches call every play perfect? Absolutely not. But when I watch, I just go, I don't know that there's anyone in any position, that's, marginally better than the guy that's across from him. And last year it was like 17 of the 22 spots. It's just like, yeah, I'm taking the guy in garden and gold over the guy on the other side.
All right, so on that topic, real quick, because there's a couple of comments in the chat about developing players. This is one of my pet peeves. You can tell me I'm wrong. Please tell me I'm wrong. Because you've used the word development a few times.
Yeah,
I'm of the belief that Keon Coleman was not developed. Like, you can refine some things.
Yeah.
But no coach is turning Keon Coleman into a 6'4" dude that can jump out of the building with great ball skills. Like, I think we use this term development. To me, it's about you. You got to develop what you have, but the key is getting better players. That's what I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't mistake what I'm saying. It's a combination of the two. That's why I said It's acquisition. So that's bringing in a Keon Coleman. And then there's a development side, which are the guys behind Keon Coleman that can enter into the game when Keon isn't playing.
Right.
What is the drop off when Keon just ran a punt back 50 yards and he needs to stand on the sideline for 2 plays? That to me is a real telltale story on your team.
Okay.
When you watch Georgia, hell, just this weekend, I think both their safeties might have got tossed for targeting.
Yeah, I think so.
Right. And they held Texas, the best offense, to 15. Teams that aren't great come back and have the excuse on why they lost that game 22-20 because both our guys got tossed. Teams that are great, like the Georgias of the world, when that happens, another guy comes in and he's responsible and accountable to do the same job. He may not be the first rounder that the guy in front of him is, but he at least the drop off isn't so drastic that we can just go right at him. And so, that's the thing. You're absolutely right. Acquiring Keon Coleman is way better than trying to develop a Keon Coleman.
Right.
It's much easier that way. And you can't create a Keon Coleman. That was a special human being. He really, really is. But I will tell you, I watched Johnny Wilson here at Arizona State, and then I watched him at Florida State, and he was not the same player. And I thought Johnny was very, very talented when he left here, but he was certainly developed at Florida State. I thought Coach Dugans did a phenomenal job with him and letting him use the abilities that he had and let those things shine instead of creating him or trying to make him be something that he wasn't. And that may have been what was happening at ASU. And so they nailed it, with someone like Johnny, and Jordan Travis. Like, people forget, we totally forget because of what he became. We forget that this guy literally, like, nobody wanted him. He was, even when he was our starter, we still were calling for guys behind him and recruit these guys and that guy and that guy. And then all of a sudden we're screaming Heisman, and we're pissed off because he's not getting, in the Heisman conversation. Well, it wasn't always that way. They did a phenomenal job with that guy. Like, that guy, they turned him an undraftable player into a legit draftable player, even with an injury. Even with a 9 to 12 month injury, they turned him into a draftable quarterback, which that was not in the cards, after his second or third season. So that's where I think we've got to, to me, the fall off is the team just isn't talented. The talent drop off is way too drastic. We saw it obviously with the Clemson. Just watch the Clemson game, and you just see, man, those guys, there's a lot of talent on that other side of that.
What's crazy and this depressing a little bit, depressing a lot of it is, so when we have to, like, when we're doing stories, I have to go find photos in our archives to use. So, like, I pull up before the Clemson game, I want to pull up a photo from last year's Florida State Clemson game to run with the story of previewing the game. And every photo is just Keon. and Johnny and Trey and Jordan and Renardo. And, and it's just like, man, none of those guys are going to be playing this Saturday. And same thing with Miami this week. Last year, Florida State was a 14-point favorite against Miami. This year, 21-point underdog. And in just 1 year. But doesn't that speak to, though, how volatile college football is? Don't you think it gives you a chance to turn it around quicker than when you were playing?
1,000,000,000%. I have to make sure that I do say that I don't feel like this is beyond repair. And I also don't think that this is like a way drastic, uncommon thing. I think a lot of teams are experiencing. The thing is, our drop off has been way steeper than most, and we won 19 straight games. Right. So going from 19 straight games to not beating a team that, in Duke, which let me tell my Duke story. Remind me to come back to my Duke story. Losing to Duke, who we've never lost to, from winning 19 straight games, like that's just a drastic drop off. Yeah. But there's no time better than now to have this sort of drop off, because there's no time better than now to have a return to prominence in the drop of a hat. It's so easy. The parity in college football now is insane. It's existed in college basketball for a long time. And the way that it exists now in football, I didn't think could ever happen. It's really, really interesting. It's the Wild West. We don't really know what's going to happen or what it's going to look like, because everything that we have known for our lifespan is changed. It's all altered, and the evolution of this thing is way beyond what our minds can even comprehend. So yeah, these things are crazy, and it can definitely, you're kind of one quarterback, and again, to me, it always comes back to how you develop your current guys. There's got to be 10 or 15 guys who are, very, almost, I don't want to say useless, but who aren't real important parts right now that somehow become that next year. And I don't necessarily mean like starters or stars, but when you can do that in an off season and then add on top of it, which is what I think happened 2 years ago, you can absolutely turn this thing around really quick. And obviously we're all kind of hoping and keeping our fingers crossed that we can do this. And you're always a quarterback away. That's one thing. You're always kind of a quarterback away. I don't believe that quarterback is on the roster right now. And but again, it doesn't take much to find that guy or get that guy. I mean, hell, we might be singing a completely different tune if it's Cam Ward instead of DJ. That ends up coming in. So you're always kind of a quarterback away. It's so much like the NFL game now. It's just kind of gives me the creeps. Like, I don't love it. I don't love that it's like, hey, we're looking forward to free agency, Right. Like I don't want that in my college football. I loved watching, for me being a California kid, I loved watching Pete Carroll rebuild that program, from the ground up when they were terrible throughout all of my high school years, and UCLA dominated. I loved watching that. I thought that was really cool. And, watching things like that were always amazing. And I loved the dynasties. Obviously, I loved the Florida State dynasty and 15 straight years of being top four. And, I loved watching that. So we won't ever see that again. And so that's weird. And I hate that.
Let me ask you one more question before I want to hear your Duke story.
Yeah.
So why is it so hard to evaluate quarterbacks? Because, I think back to when Jimbo was here, he's coming off of Jameis. He had Coker on this roster. You win a national title. You feel like he should be able to get the pick of whatever quarterback he wants. He just had how many straight first-round NFL quarterbacks? Ponder, EJ, Jamarcus Russell, Jameis Winston. And then you go out and sign some guys that probably don't belong in Florida State. And then you look at around the country, and again, Mike Norvell decides to go with DJU, which I don't think in hindsight was a good fit for what he's trying to do. Why is it so hard? Like, why is it just because until you sit down and talk to them, it's hard to, I mean, I don't know, but even in recruiting, there's so much time invested in getting to know these guys. Why is it so hard to get that right? Because your point, you're always a quarterback away. But if you don't have a quarterback, you're sunk.
Yeah.
So,
So I think what's important, what you just said is time. And that is the illusion, is that you have more time than you actually have. So for the top, let's just say the top 15 quarterbacks in the country, how much time do you actually have? Usually those guys start to pop. There starts to be YouTube videos and things like that around 8th grade.
8th, 9th grade, yeah.
Which means that offers start to roll in about 9th grade, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am not, and this actually happened with my own son, if I am not in with a lot of kids, let's say I'm not in those first 15 big time schools to get in, to just begin the communication, it might not even be an offer. The illusion that I now have 4 years to recruit a guy and get to know him, that doesn't actually exist, because a lot of those kids are actually planning on committing by the time they start, let's say, their sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be the end of your junior year. Say when I was coming out, it's like the end of your junior year. You want to be committed for your whole senior year type of thing. Well, that clock has been moved way up. So now with that clock being moved up, if I don't start moving on that guy way before I should be, I might not end up in that first 15.
Right.
And if I'm not on that first 15, what I then have to do when I come in is I have to be uberly aggressive and over the top. Well, once I do that, there is no getting to know a guy. It's, we're offering you, this is how much you're going to play. It's a very aggressive timeline, because I got to have you committed by the time you finish your sophomore year, let's say.
Yeah, and if the kid's got 20 offers, he's maybe not all that interested in you evaluating him.
Like no, that's the thing about this illusion of time is you no longer you don't have time to really evaluate anybody. You know, they're really evaluating you. They have all the power now, because the timetable has been moved to a certain way that now if you don't offer me now, I just go to Miami. Mm-hmm. Because they're offering me X amount of dollars, and I know I'm going to play when I'm a freshman. They've already promised me that. And you haven't promised me anything other than come sit and talk to us for 2 hours. Like, no kid wants to do that. Right. Like, no, there's money over here. Like, I'm going where the money is. And so that's the thing, that there's this illusion of time that we get to know as college coaches, that we get to know these kids. We get to know them, but we don't. You almost have to do the relationship backwards. Right. Commit to me, and then once we're engaged, because I don't want to call it a marriage, because all the kids decommit now before they, no kid is actually reporting to the school that he's committed to. It's like over 50% of the school, kids that are committed aren't committed, which we got to change that word, by the way. There is no committed. There's no committed. It's not committed. It's not commitment. But so that's the problem, is that we're engaged, and then I get to know you. Now we spend the next 3 years, and now I have to figure out, how do I make the marriage work? But we were engaged already. We're not married yet. Now you move in, after your senior year of high school. Now you move in, and now I've got to figure out, how do I make this marriage work? But this person doesn't know how to read a defense. Right. But I didn't find that out until after we were engaged, because I didn't have the time. And so that's the thing, is there's this illusion that you have this time, and it doesn't exist. So you got to move on a kid when they're talented. This is the top. Yeah. I'm talking about the top kids, the kids that are in the top 200 or whatever, 300. Like, you just don't have a lot of time. You gotta move, and because the parents are wanting to know what their money, what their NIL is going to look like, and all that stuff, and people are telling them a bunch of lies, and so they're committing to these lies, And so you just get stuck in this vicious cycle. And so, but I'll also say this in terms of evaluating quarterbacks, until they're in your system and having to process and then apply the things that they're processing, you don't know until you know. Like there's only so, I mean, hell, just look at the NFL. Right. Look how hard it is. It's not just hard for colleges now.
That's
like
fair.
The NFL, there's that's a huge problem that everyone's having, because once you get here, now I then have to figure out how do you apply what I teach based off of watching what you've been taught. Sorry. So you've been taught something in high school and taught how to do something, and you figured out a way to have success for inferior athletes. So I have to then translate, does that fit into what I do and what I believe? And then can you apply my thing?
Right.
And that's a very tough thing to do, because I don't know what you're being told on a day-to-day basis. I don't know where your eyes are, where you're told your eyes should be, or what the play call is in the huddle and all of those things. And those are the things that you hope that a coaching staff is doing, trying to figure out, especially from the quarterback position. But it just doesn't always, again, until I can actually see you apply those things. It's really, really hard to judge in advance just based off of conversation or sitting in meetings, which is what they do with the recruits.
So what's your Duke story?
So I just wanted to tell this story because I should have started with it. But I think about this every year when we go play Duke, especially when we're there. So my very first college football game was at Duke. My very last high school game was the state championship in Southern California. So we probably played in front of 27,000 or something, 30,000 people, in a packed stadium. It was incredible. And I won two state titles and then played for a third in my high school career. So I was at a really good high school, it played in front of a lot of people. So now I'm going to play for the Florida State, man, my dream school, the school that I've always, wanted to play for. We're suiting up and we pull into the stadium at Duke. And I'm like, what in the world is that? So I'm looking at this stadium and I'm going, wow. So this is my first game. It's cool. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people there. It'll be great. There was probably like somewhere close to 1,000 people there. Students weren't even there. I don't even know if their parents, the opposing team's parents, were not even at the game. Like this Duke was so bad. But the thing that they did to us, and I don't know, it wasn't to us specifically, but we pull into the guest locker room, the visitors locker room, and we walk in, and the room is about as big as this room that I'm in right now. It's about as big of as an office, maybe a big office. And there's 3 bathroom stalls that are side by side. Boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3. The bathroom stalls have no doors on them.
Nice.
It's just completely wide open. Now, mind you, you've got 85 guys who just ate their pregame meal and are about to go play their first game of the season. Behind or facing the bathroom stalls are the tables in which the athletic trainers, most of which are females, and they have to tape ankles and whatever else, facing the bathroom stalls in which have 0 doors on them for 85 guys who are going to need to use those toilets. And there were no toilets anywhere else. Like you use those or you didn't go.
Right.
And that was my first college game. I'll never forget it. It was the wildest. I couldn't believe. I mean, we all stood and just stared at those stalls for forever. And eventually, I can't remember what we figured out. Like, I think they had guys stand in front of the stall, like with their back to it, so that they could at least block the vision of the girls who were trying to tape the ankles and do things. But I always hold a grudge towards Duke because of that. And I always feel like they deserve to lose 50-0 every game they play. So watching them beat us was extra painful for me because that was a wild, and I never had another experience like that. No, I mean, Miami's visitor locker room was bad. It was hot in there or whatever, but it was at least like spacious, and the bathroom stalls had doors on them.
Yeah.
Like there was nowhere else that had anything. Like it was the worst thing. I was telling Deuce yesterday, I was like, there was no high school locker room that looked as bad as the visitors locker room at Duke. Like it was horrendous.
Not putting a lot of money into the football facilities, but that's the thing.
Yeah.
That is when Florida State's bad in football. The worst part about it, like when you lose to Duke or Wake Forest, we'd never seen a Duke loss before, but we've been seeing some Wake Forest losses. The most frustrating thing is when you go and you're at their stadium and they beat Florida State, and you watch the fans and you realize they don't really care. I mean, it's not like you said, the Duke game, there was like a few thousand people there. Like,
right.
You know how much Florida State fans care and how much money is put into it. When you lose to these schools that don't really even care, it's something to do until basketball season. It's just infuriating.
That is, I experienced that firsthand. They really didn't care back then, and it's actually kind of cool because they care so much more now. Than it was never even close during my time there, where they never put anything into. They at least have brought in some decent coaches and have done some decent things. But yeah, man, that's my Duke story, and I thought I'd tell that, and it was tough.
That's good stuff.
Tough moment, yeah.
All right, man. So you looking at Miami real quick?
Yeah.
Rivalry game.
Yeah.
Give us a little pep talk. What do you go when you go into a game? It's a rivalry game. Obviously, two teams going in completely different directions. What would you look for in this game? Like, are you going to watch it? Are you going to watch it? Are you going to wait till watch it after you see the score? What are your thoughts?
I'll watch the game. I always will watch the game. It's kind of how long will I watch it? Will I make it the whole game? To be honest, man, there's just not much to even be excited about.
Right.
But I'll tell you, if there's a turnover early, something on special teams, something funky on special teams, these things can get funky now. Like these games, even when the talent is, disproportional, any rivalry game, I'm not hopeful for that. Right. I don't think that that's realistic, but I definitely will tune in to kind of see, does Coach Norvell kind of let it hang out and try some things, and maybe we can get a little weather or something like that and kind of even the playing field. But honestly, there's not much that I'm too excited about seeing. It just he's found some things with Brock. I think, like I said, some of the quick game stuff.
Miami's defense has not been great.
No,
I know it wasn't a lot of offense. I mean, they've had some weird. They've given up some points, not just like teams moving up and down the field, but the defense is not like incredible. The problem is this offense hasn't done anything against anybody, so it's hard to predict it.
Yeah, and I'm super encouraged about what our defense is doing. But just watching Cam Ward enough, so I was a huge Cam Ward fan when he was on the West Coast. And just I've watched him enough. I actually haven't even really watched him this year, but watching him last year a bunch, he's one of those guys that you can be sound everywhere. You can be coverage perfect, contain perfect, and he's just so athletic and he's so good with the football in his hands. Like he will find a way to make a positive play. And if you can't get him out of the game, then you're fighting more than an uphill battle. He's a magician with the football in his hands. And so even when you're good, it's not good enough. He finds a way to at least fall forward, and then it's 2nd and 6,
And even if you've got everything covered on a pass play, you've got everything covered. he can extend it so long that there's just no way you can cover for 12 seconds. I feel like you got to heat him up as much as you can, but even that, now you're exposing yourself.
Yeah, and to me, honestly, like that's probably the play because
you just can't get him up.
again, you just playing it passive is just kind of the thing I say is like answer your questions with aggression. So it's like go try to go get after him, and like I said, maybe you can get him to tweak an ankle or a shoulder or something early, and then maybe things can get interesting. But as long as he's healthy and in the game, like that hill is a mountain. So I'm not but again, you and I've said this before, and this was like in the early JT days when I first started with you guys on Warchant. There's still things that you want to see, like you can see a 35-10 game or 38-10 or 42-10 or whatever, and see a bunch of things that are encouraging. And you could also see a 42-10 and go, that is just a garbage, that is and so I there's certain things that I still want to see. And that's why, I'll still obviously tune in because I still want to see my team play with some conviction, some fight, and some passion, and a lot of things will tell you about the culture, moving forward. So it's not just always the scoreboard. I don't live and die by the scoreboard. There's a bunch of things that we can see that will tell us like, hey, we're moving in the right direction. There's some things that maybe we have to win a game later, which is important. And so, you want to see those guys, do that.
Well, thanks for stopping by, man. I appreciate it.
Sure.
And thanks for doing the video with Tom the other day again. And I think Ben's going to put this in the notes. It was in the chat also for people that want to go back and watch that all 22 video. You can learn a little football and get some good insights into Brock Glenn and also football in general from D-Rob. So go check that
sure
out.
And be on the lookout for the breakdown this week. And we'll put Tom and I will put something out there, and something to keep us encouraged and keep us coming back for the punishment that is Saturday night or Saturday. What time is the game Saturday?
It is Saturday night, 7:00.
Saturday night. Yeah. Keep us looking forward to something on Saturday, man.
Thanks again. Thanks everybody for watching and participating in the chat and enjoyed it. And thanks for Russ Voorhis for sponsoring the show as always. RussVoorhis.com is the website. Get your information on your insurance needs. And thanks for smashing it up, D-Rob. And we'll talk to you soon, and we'll see everybody soon.
Yes, sir. Love you guys. Go Noles.
Take care.